Yeah, so Chris, we're talking about medical malpractice involving bed sores today. Bed sores are often preventable. Can you explain the standard of care that medical facilities have to prevent bed sores in patients?
I'd start by saying that they're almost always preventable. And the way they're preventable, I mean, in fact, I don't know how familiar people are with never events, but Medicare has determined that there's certain things that happen in healthcare settings that they call never events, which means they should never happen. And if they do happen, Medicare is not paying for them. And the reason is because in the case of bed sores is that they're preventable. They're preventable and shouldn't happen to patients. And the reason is because there's lots of ways to avoid them. I mean, the first thing is to make sure that a patient's uh, turning, gets out of bed, is not laying in the same place for hours and hours, because that's how bed sores form. And if for some reason the patient's immobile, like a paralyzed patient, for example, um, well, then it's important that the healthcare providers either turn the patient periodically, or there's also padding that they can place underneath the patient so they're not in constant contact with the bed. So yeah, they're very preventable.
So some people might not realize that bed sores then could be a sign of medical negligence or medical malpractice. When might a bed sore develop due to negligence by a healthcare provider?
Yeah, well, like I said, almost always, if there's a bed sore, there's something that could have been done to prevent it.
And so the hospitals generally will, like you said, make sure that they're turning the person from their left side to their right side once every hour or two or something like that, and in order to prevent it. And if bed sores are appearing, then it's a sign that maybe that type of care was not happening.
Or they have special boots they can put on people. So, because most bed sores happen on the heel, on the back of the leg, or on the buttocks. So, there's like I said, padding that can be done. There's special mattresses that can be used to prevent you know, that these bed sores from forming. Although, most bed sores occur in nursing homes, rehab places. Not as much in hospitals, because hospitals have nurses who are trained to turn patients and periodically check in on patients. Uh, Whereas most of the time they occur from understaffing or poor training of the staff in these types of facilities that I mentioned, because they're not turning patients, or they don't have the availability, let's say, of like the special boots or the mattresses. So those cost money. Those are the factors that really go into causing people to have bed sores.
Bed sores can actually lead to other significant health problems. What are some of the potential consequences of bed sores, besides just the sores themselves if they're not properly cared for?
Well, two things really: infection, because the sores, as they get worse. I mean, there's 4 different stages of a bed sore, but it's just rotting flesh after a while, which is causing severe infection, and it can go from the skin to the bone. Uh, the other thing is just a lack of mobility even after the wound. If once the wound is healed, it can still cause problems with scarring or lack of mobility. And also, once you get a bed sore, past stage one, it takes extensive amount of treatment just to get it to heal. So there's a lot of medical care and treatment involved in that.
So, if someone believes that their loved one developed bed sores due to negligence in a healthcare facility, what evidence should they be looking for to start to build a case?
Well, just the existence of the bed sore. It is important for the family to document the bed sore, but document the skin, because a lot of times in the medical records, it doesn't get documented. And so just to have a day by day record of the evolution of the bed sore is very helpful.
What's the best way to do that? Should people be taking pictures of their loved
Yeah,
one?
with your cell phone.
Right.
Yeah, and
Yeah, I mean that's helpful these days that everybody has a camera on their cell phone. Years ago, that would have been much more difficult to make that kind of documentation.
right, and like they say, a picture's worth 1,000 words. So that's the best evidence in a bedsore case, is kind of to show the evolution of that. And honestly, some of these bedsores are pretty gruesome to pick, and to see the pictures of them, even for somebody who's done this for 40 years, to see some of these some bedsores, still makes you wince.
Is there other evidence that people should be looking for, or that you as an attorney would look to try to collect?
Well, I mean, the other thing is going to be in the records of either the hospital or facility that they were in. I mean, they're required to document every time they turn the patient, whatever measures they say that they use to prevent the bed sore, which most of the time is going to be not, lacking in the record, which is, the proof.
Do you have any legal challenges that you need to face as an attorney when you're involved in pursuing a medical malpractice lawsuit that's centered on bed sores?
The biggest challenge is that people that are, most of the people that get bed sores are, if they're in a nursing home or they're in a facility, they weren't, they were the end of life, or, not in their best health in the first place. So it's more, it's hard. This is one particular malpractice where it's hard for the caregivers to defend the care. So they try to just defend the damages, so to speak, or the harms and losses, and say that well, the person wasn't that healthy in the first place, or weren't going to live that much longer. To most people, that doesn't seem like much of an offense, but that's what they try to do. So those are the challenges.
I'd imagine it's difficult too. Like in some cases, it may be difficult for you to say interview the patient and say like, "Hey, how often did the doctors come and check on you?" Whatever they might not be, like you said, at the end of their life. In a place where they're able to give you accurate information about their own care.
That's true. And, in those cases, we just have to rely on the family. Most of the time the family's been there every day or kind of seen what's going on. So we have to rely on their testimony. But you're exactly right. Most of the time these people, the injured party themselves, aren't able to verbalize, what happened, or the complaints that they made to the caregivers, telling them their symptoms, or, hey, I got, my heel hurts, or, the skin's breaking down, things like that.